Hello and welcome back to another video from Strive Academic. If you are with us in this video today, you are doing Module B Standard English and you are here to look at the close study of a text rubric. If you're unfamiliar with the rubric and you haven't seen it yet, please check it out online. You can go to the NESA website and find the 2019 to 226 English prescriptions and scroll down until you see the standard course Module B, close study of a text. Take a look and get back to this video. Okay, time to get into the rubric. Now that you've had a look and you've had a read of it online in the prescriptions list, I'm going to take you through a bit of an introduction of the key elements, the key concepts, the key ideas, and the key terminology. So firstly, I want to take you through an overview of the objectives of the module. You see that it's split into kind of categories, what students or what you are going to learn about versus what you are going to learn to do skills-wise. So the about or the content or the topic of this rubric, close study of a text, is that it is a study of a substantial literary text. So that's the focus here. What is a substantial literary text? Why is that text that has been selected for you to study considered substantial, and going from there. And I'll take you through the details of that in a couple of moments. But I also wanted to highlight that in terms of the rubric, the key skills element of this is how it prepares you to critically analyze. And not just analyze a text, but also have some sort of personal response to it, an interpretation. What you're probably noting from this rubric is quite different to the others in that it doesn't have a central guiding topic or theme or issue, perhaps. It's quite broad in that it's just a close study. And that has been made deliberately broad for you so that you can, as a student, have your own personal interpretation, your own personal response, and let your own insight guide the critical analysis that you will produce for your prescribed text here. So, the first thing I get students to think about and I want you to consider is what do you think is the value of studying a literary text in depth? So, firstly, why a substantial text? Why one that is acclaimed and really valued and resonates with audience? Why have all students study a text like that? And two, what is the impact on audience meant to be? You are the audience. What do you get out of it? What perspective, what new value, what new insight are you gaining from this study of a substantial literary text? Now I want to delve more deeply in what is a literary text. So remember that this is a poem, prose fiction text, a film, a non-fiction text, any kind of narrative that's taking place that is particularly valued because of its style, its unique form, and often having an aesthetic or artistic style and having then enduring value. So let's deep dive into that a little bit more now. This essence of artistic, aesthetic, and enduring value is really what makes your text a substantial literary text. So, the purpose of the module is that you have an engagement with this text so that you can understand narrative wise what's occurring. You can have knowledge of the text. You can be informed in terms of its perspectives and points of views it's putting across to its audiences. So that ultimately, in the end, you can have an appreciation of this text. Now, remember, don't have to love this text. It doesn't have to be a text that you might have chosen in your own spare time. But what you do have to do to engage with it is develop an appreciation. And what that means is you can identify at least one major aspect or element of the text which endures. That means that it has relevance to you as an audience, to other people that might be accessing it, and to audiences across space and time that have accessed this text as well. And what that usually means is there's some sort of human connection or evocative nature or really universal element, idea, point that's being made in this text that gives it an enduring value. Now, secondly, what also makes it an enduring literary text is its key characteristics, its distinctive stylistic features, which I will cover a little bit more in a couple of moments, but its sense of thematic concern, its sense of style, and its sense of use of language. This is where the text might really lend itself to this idea of aesthetic and having artistic value, in that it might have a very unique style or form that helps this text stand out amongst the rest in its categories. And thirdly, what makes it a substantial literary text is the way that it's able to respond or reflect cultural movements. Now, what we mean by this is not only has the text been formed within a cultural and societal movement or moment or specific contextual space and time, but also that it might have inspired societal and cultural understandings with the meaning that has been produced in your text. So consider, what has the impact been on audience? Is it a critically acclaimed text, and why? Has it been very well received, and why? Why do audiences then and now value this text, and why? Now, the other key aspect of your Module B close study rubric is the idea of a personal response. The end goal in this module is to ensure that once students have engaged with the substantial literary text, have developed an understanding and an appreciation, they can now move on to a personal interpretation. And this is actually encouraging you to have your own considered unique response to the text. And that will eventually become your thesis and your main line of argument in what you think the text is expressing. But ultimately, it comes from your engagement. If you're not engaging with the text and you're not developing a sense of appreciation, it'll be really difficult for you to have a really thorough and well honed personal response that will serve you really well in exam conditions. One way to achieve a personal response is considering some of the main aspects that we've already talked about. What makes it substantial? What makes it aesthetic? What makes it endure in its value? And then consider, what has stood out to you? Where have your emotions aligned and connected to those in the text? Where have the text themes or messages resonated? Or what new perspective or insight or consideration has the text left you with? What has it taught you? Ultimately, what you should also consider is, how does your own personal experience and what you understand about the world influence how you interpret the world and the messaging of the text? And this will be different for all students. And that's the aim of this module, so that all students can exceed with their own unique interpretation. Another aspect of the rubric is the idea of context within your literary text and how that informs your own understanding of what you are reading. So, for this, it's important to understand the cultural or societal or historical background forces that are influencing the production of the novel. So, say to yourself, what is the time frame of this work? Is the genre alluding to something contextual here? Are the characters or the issues in the story playing out certain real world issues in certain contextual timeframes? And the way to see if this is occurring and how it's occurring is to consider how the composer or the author of your text is actually portraying the people and the characters, portraying the ideas, themes, and issues, and also what settings are they bringing forward to help you visualize and immerse yourself in the world of the text. The other way to gain some contextual insights is to also consider your author or your director's background. So, understanding their background, their personal biography, helps us to understand their motivations, and what is inspiring the purpose of their text. Their influences, again, may play a role in the purpose of their story. And what societal issues are they addressing? In what ways are they speaking to a certain audience, and why? What is their purpose or perspective or authorial intent? And as you're diving into your composer's context, it's important for you to ask yourself, What about my composer and their real world and their real life is shaping or influencing how I understand what is occurring within their text? Now, as part of your close study, you'll need to come to the analysis point. This is where you're considering thematic, stylistic, and language elements that are helping shape the messaging and the ideas that are coming out within your prescribed text. First thing we can look at is characterization, ideas, themes, setting, plot elements, conflict. Having a look at these narrative elements will help us understand what kind of specific ideas or messages are coming through. By examining these elements, you're also starting to zero in on the text's distinct qualities. So, when you're examining your text, think to yourself, which language elements seem to be really stylistic here? Are there certain language techniques that the author favors in their quotes, in their dialogue, in their descriptions? Is there a certain way they're using characterization or voice and tone? How are they creating mood and atmosphere within their setting and aspects of their story? And what big structural or stylistic techniques might they be using either within their genre or within the narrative in enabling the plot to come through? It's really good to look closely at these narrative elements and how the author is bringing them forward, because that will also give you insight into the author's intended purpose and messaging. So, something that I want you to think about as you're engaging in a close reading and then the analysis of your prescribed text is I want you to think about what ideas are central, important, crucial to the story that's taking place on a narrative level, but also to the purpose of what your author is trying to get across to his or her audience. Don't forget as well, when you're analyzing and you're examining your text, is to deep dive into the language features and their impact. Remember, in English, the how is crucial. If you have an idea that you've noted as central from your author, how are they using language features to represent that? So you might consider, what is the interplay between the idea, the form or the text type or the genre, and the specific language elements and techniques such as dialogue, tone, symbolism, metaphor. You also might think about how are language features affecting certain responses to the text. What emotions are they eliciting in you? In what ways is the specific language feature immersive? In what way are you connected to either the character or the idea or the issue that's being framed? Also, don't forget that you need to analyze specific language features. So it's very good to spend some time annotating and identifying them and pulling them out as you go and as you read your prescribed text. Table formats work really well, or notes lists work really well. And then you will find when it's time to create your body and your written analysis, you have a starting point of key elements that you've already pulled out to work with. So when you're considering analysis, ask yourself, what language features stand out? What moments of the text stand out? And what ideas stand out? And why? That why is where you're going to eventually get your own appreciation and your own personal response and approach that you will take in your extended responses for Module B. Now, the last aspect of the rubric in this video is text appreciation. And there's two key things to consider here. One, developing your own personal and intellectual connections to the text to form an appreciation. And two, demonstrating that appreciation within your critical and creative responses. Let's start with personal and intellectual connections. You want to start by connecting your own personal insights to the analysis that you have found in your text. Where do your points of view align or illuminate? Or where has your point of view been challenged? Or perhaps even where has it ignited a new understanding? You also want to consider, in what ways and aspects and elements are you enjoying and appreciating this form of literature? Is it the overall purpose and intent? Is it a specific theme that you want to zone in on? Is it the way that characterization has been used to explore, our own human ideals? A good place to start with is I think this text is about, and I'm engaging with it because. Start basic. Other sentence stems you can use might be, what is a key stylistic feature of this text? What is its certain aesthetic? The aspect of aesthetic in the text that I engage with most is. I have developed some insights into. I have developed some thoughts of. I'm appreciating the way in which the narrative tells the story of. It is really crucial that you start to develop your own personal thoughts and ideas on the text so that you can move forward and then use them to create responses. In this way, your responses will reflect your textual knowledge and your understanding. You'll be able to incorporate some evidence from the text, your key quotes, your best and most apt evidence, your key characterization, your key setting elements. And don't forget that evidence also includes your language features devices and how that can be reinforced by the context of the text as well. There is a real deep importance here when you're creating your responses that you are drafting, that you are appraising and reflecting, and therefore refining. The more you do this, the more confidence you'll have in your response so that you will be able to adapt it and reshape it and make new considerations based on specific questions and tasks that are given to you. In class, you may engage in some creative responses and activities to engage with the stylistic and aesthetic elements of the text. In the HSC, you will do a Module B essay. So it's important that you start to hone in on what your perspective is, what your approach is, and creating a thesis around that. And then thinking about where there are elements of the text that support that perspective and insight. This is a process. I can't stress that enough. Nothing is ever great on the first try, not even things that your teachers will produce. It is an absolute fact that refining is what helps you elevate your results, your understanding, and helps you move upwards in your educational goals.